I just wanted to bring some attention to the amount of care and giving that quilters give to each other as a way of caring for each other, and how they use their skills and their talents to care for themselves and to care for other people.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. If you're still joining, good thing you haven't missed much. We're right at the beginning of our time. So, I am Paul Curtis, and I'm honored that I have the privilege to be your host and moderator today for this very special webinar called Quilting to Cope: Navigating Loss, Trauma, and Pain. And as many of you may know, this is an event sponsored by the Quilting Poodle out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So thank you, Quilted Poodle, for sponsoring this. And thank you very much for our panel of speakers who will be introduced shortly for joining. And thank you so much for everybody that is connecting right now and has been with us for the past couple of minutes. I do want to give a special thank you to our international guest. So thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. We are very grateful for your attendance, and we know you have lots of different options as to what you could be doing with your time right now, and we're very happy that you've decided to spend it with us. That said, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what this event is. And we'll have some remarks from Marie and from others to really give you more context and to also set the stage for what we're going to be talking about in depth. So, quilting to cope. Very interesting topic, very interesting kind of phrasing there. But I think as many of us have experienced, certainly through different times in our lives, we undergo traumatic experiences. We have different challenges that life throws in our path. And for this group of panelists, as I think said in the description, they are expert quilters. They are master artisans, and I think they have found something and utilized the skill set that they have to help them cope with some of the traumatic experiences that they have gone through. And so, that, in a nutshell, is what we're going to be talking about today. So, let me go ahead and let's get into some introductions. All right. On our screen here, you see our different panelists. As you can see, we also have a bit of variety, a bit of diversity here as well, and I think that will add to the perspective and the flavor, if you will, of the different experiences that that our panelists have gone through, and potentially how some of their experiences might even relate to your own. So, Marie, would you go ahead and kick off and go ahead and give us an introduction, please?
Hello, I'm Marie Bard Curtis, and as it says, the founder of the Quilted Poodle, but I also conduct an online QCT, or Quilters Creative Touch software training course over Zoom. So I've met a number of quilters, and I guess I've been doing this for about 4 years. And during that time, my husband was going through prostate cancer and treatment. And so a couple of times I had to cancel the meetings because of his treatment, because of his care. And a number of people slipped me notes or called or sent me cards and commiserated with me. But during that time, I was hearing from a number of people who were going through similar kinds of circumstances. And so I was just very touched by the number of people that reached out to me and just gave me hope and cared for me and just blessed me with their feelings. So I was just touched by the outpouring that I received from people. Some I knew very well, and some I just knew on the fringes. So I just wanted to bring some attention to the amount of care and giving that quilters give to each other as a way of caring for each other, and how they use their skills and their talents to care for themselves and to care for other people.
Outstanding. Karen, would you like to go next?
Yes, I'd love to. I'm Karen Reed. I started my quilting journey a long time ago. We were about to adopt a brand new little boy from Korea. My sister and my grandmother sat down with me and we made him his quilt that he loved forever. During that time, I was working, but I hadn't found my path in work or was really focused on growing the kids. And as we got on, I went ahead and I'm a lifelong learner. I got my PhD in healthcare administration and worked very, very hard. I did do quilting in between because I love to quilt. I love crafting. Um, and one of the things my husband and I found that we do very, very well is we are good caregivers for our loved ones at the end of their journey. We have been blessed to do that with many of our family members. One that was very special to me was my sister. Now, I didn't think it was really going to be the end of her journey, but in fact, it was. And we realized as her cancer journey went on that even though I worked in the healthcare field and we had access to the best healthcare there was, there had to be more. And so we went on a journey of holistic medicine. And we found that there were other options out there that would complement the Western medicine. So I ended up becoming a certified traditional naturopath. I became a Reiki master and I became certified in chakra healing. Now, chakras and Reiki, everybody will hear the term, oh, he's got a good aura, he's got a bad aura. You hear of energy fields around the body, and that's really what Reiki and chakras are. So as I've kind of, you put on these two little things, here I am in administration in the hospital field, and here I am in this touchy-feely stuff. But as I worked in this area, and we would see the benefit that my sister was having when she couldn't breathe because her lungs were so clogged up with this cancer, and I could give her Reiki and she could breathe. It was such a testament to the physicians and to the hospitals that we were able to start a complementary medicine program at some of the facilities that I was responsible for. We very carefully did not call it alternative medicine. It's not alternative, it's complementary. So during that time, it's anytime you're caring for someone, a loved one, it is a difficult time. So as we went on her journey, and then unfortunately, my son, we took that journey with him. And I'll get into that later when we talk about self-care and some of the others. But quilting was a very important part of that for me, as was the self-care that I needed to do to be able to keep myself grounded in doing all of that care that I thought I was blessed to give to my family.
Thank you, Karen. And I know we all look forward to hearing more about your story and context as we get further into discussion. Brenda, would you like to go?
Well, I fell in love with sewing when I was in the 8th grade and took a home economics class. And so my young years, I've been sewing. It's only been in the last maybe 20 or 25 years that I really decided I wanted to do quilting. And of course, that always required, and I wanted to have a dedicated sewing room. So about 20 years ago, my husband decided that I should have one. So that really encouraged me to be able to sew and quilt when I have a place and I didn't have to put it up. And that was encouraging to me. I had a dual career. I'm the grandmother of 20 grandchildren scattered all over the United States. So I've made a lot of t-shirt quilts when they graduated from high school. And that was a good, joyous time to do something for somebody there. And I'll share later on, one of my daughters had a traumatic illness that required a lot of care. And I became a caregiver for her for a period of time when we didn't think she was going to be able to live. And And I'll share more of that. And I didn't realize at the time how much quilting helped me through that time with her. She got over her illness and is a very healthy young mother. She's not so young anymore. I'm 84 years old, so I've been around for a long time. And the older I get, the more I appreciate being able to do the quilting, that for pleasure as well as for helping others get through whatever season they are going through.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Elnita, would you go next, please?
Yes. Good evening. I'm Elnita Ottey. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor. And in my work as a mental health counselor, I'm committed to supporting individuals on their journey toward emotional wellness and resilience. And I'm very passionate about guiding individuals toward a fulfilling life. And this stems from my deep-rooted belief that difficult life experiences disrupt our well-being, and this can lead to anxiety, depression, or a sense of aimlessness. My goal is to empower others to navigate life challenges while discovering and leveraging their inner strength, to cultivate a happier and healthier version of themselves. In my work as a mental health counselor, I've aided clients in multiple ways, from understanding and managing emotional reactions related to anxiety, depression, grief, and PTSD, and also coping with chronic pain. My specialties are, I specialize in trauma, and I'm nationally certified in trauma-focused therapies, which include EMDR and trauma-focused CBT. And I'm honored to be with you all tonight to share my insights and experiences.
Excellent. Thank you so much, all of you on the panel. If it's not evident yet, I think we've got a pretty good lineup. I think these are heavy hitters. I'm so excited about what's to come. I hope you all are excited as well. So we're going to progress to our next but quick topic here. And for everything that the panelists have said so far, I think one of the important things is really to set the stage here, that I think, as Karen mentioned, this isn't just, kind of a touchy-feely presentation or conversation. What people are experiencing, these things are backed by data. And so one of the things I want to flash up here, just kind of some quick facts to really kind of wrap your head around, and really kind of, hang or put out there some hooks to hang some discussion points on later. And there is a theme to tie all of this together. So just if anybody's joined over the phone, I'll just kind of summarize these points. These are statistics and studies and surveys that have been conducted by the CDC, World Health Organization, and the American Psychological Association. And the stats pretty much read like this. Over 264 million people worldwide suffer from depression. That's from the World Health Organization, and that is a statistic. In the US, chronic pain affects more than 50 million adults. That's from the CDC, study conducted in 2021. In the US, an estimated 3.5 million people die annually, leaving countless individuals grappling with loss. Again, statistics from the CDC and more recent, taken in 2023. And the last one is 77% of Americans reported experiencing physical symptoms caused by stress. And that was conducted by the American Psychological Association. And so really the theme here that ties all this together across different walks of life, across the different people, in your family or friends, associates, people you don't know, people sitting across the row from you, one of the things that binds us all together is the fact that we have challenges in life. We're all subjected to an element or a level of trauma. We're all subjected to an element of pain, and we're all subjected to an element of loss. And if not yet, then eventually. And so the bad news is here that unfortunately we're not alone in this. But the good news here is that we're not alone in this. So that said, we'll move on and move to our next point here. And what we're going to talk about is on the screen. So quilting to cope, again, reiterating our topic. Here are the topics we're going to discuss today. And the wonderful thing about it is each of our panelists is going to really carry part of the conversation. We'll have lots of questions asked and answered from the panelists during this discussion. And then as we get near the end of this discussion, especially around topic number 4, we're going to flash some information around support and resource information for attendees of this webinar. And hopefully we're going to have a very healthy discussion. So very quickly, our topics, again, for folks who are joined over the phone, number 1 is the therapeutic impact of quilting in the midst of loss and traumatic experiences. We've heard some of that already from the panelists as they gave their intros. Topic 2, what are healthy coping mechanisms and how to cultivate them? Going to be an interesting topic, I guarantee it. Number 3, the importance of self-care. And number 4, supportive communities and helpful resources for mental health. So those are our topics today. And without further ado, we're going to get into those topics. And I said without further ado, but first, we're going to conduct a quick poll just to check where you all are, viewers and audience members, kind of in your journey or on this spectrum of experiencing trauma, pain, and loss. Please note that the polls are conducted anonymously, so your results won't be seen by anybody else. So feel free to answer as truthfully as you'd like, or you don't even have to take the poll at all if you don't want. So let's move into our first poll. Are you currently working through a traumatic or painful experience? And so we'll hold the poll for about 30 seconds, so you all can drop your answers in. And meanwhile, while we're doing that, I guess, Marie, out of curiosity, and I know it's something we're going to talk about in greater detail, what advice, generally speaking, would you give somebody who you might be supporting who's going through a traumatic or a painful experience? And let's keep it rather short because we're just going to the end of the poll here. So what advice?
Probably what I would say, and this is what some people did for me, is never ignore the person, never pretend like something didn't happen. So always try to approach that person and just give them an opening to talk. So maybe it's, how are you feeling? Or can I do anything for you? And just give them an opening to say what they're feeling, what they need. Maybe they just want you to give them a hug. So, or in my case, when my husband passed, it was, don't act like you don't want to mention his name, because I want to hear his name. So, say their name, asked me to recall an experience with them. That was always comforting to me.
Thank you for sharing that. And the results of our poll are in. So the question, are you currently working through a traumatic or painful experience? Number 1, thank you everybody who participated in the poll. Again, we're trying to make this experience as interactive as possible, as much as you can on a webinar. But let's talk about some of the results very quickly. So we had 4 answers. So answer 1 is yes, I'm struggling with how to cope and work through my situation. Answer 2 is yes, but I feel like I'm in control. Answer 3, no, but I've had traumatic experiences in the past and I was able to work through them. And answer 4, no, I've been very fortunate to never have experienced loss, pain, or trauma. I'm very happy to hear that for answer number 4, we had 6% of our attendees who fell into that category. I'm very, very happy for you all, and I hope it is as delayed as it can be for you. At the top of our results, at 44%, people answered, yes, I'm struggling with how to cope and work through my situation. And in the second place, at 28%, no, but I've had traumatic experiences in the past and I was able to work through them. So again, thank you everybody for that. I appreciate it. And again, we want this to be as interactive as we're able. So let's go ahead and jump into our first topic area. All right. So, Marie, would you go ahead and lead off this conversation about the therapeutic impact of quilting in the midst of loss and traumatic experiences? And I think probably the best place to start is, um, as you're ready, sharing your traumatic experience, and in the case of loss, how quilting helped you, I guess, maintain a level of sanity.
Okay. There was a need to do something positive to channel all the emotions I was feeling after the loss of my husband. And so I wanted to make a quilt I wanted to make it for my daughter-in-law. And so I wanted to make a quilt that had a star in the middle that was made out of my husband's shirt. And the concept in my mind as I was thinking about it is that he was the star in the middle of all of our lives. So I wanted to put that in the middle and then surround it with other designs, but I was thinking about that concept that he was a star in all of our lives. And as I was putting together the other blocks and putting together the quilt, I was thinking about him. And that was just very therapeutic for me to get those thoughts out and sort of imbue that quilt with thoughts of him. And that helped me to just feel like I was getting those thoughts out and feel like I was making some progress and moving forward and not just being sad about something, but actually doing something and creating a gift that I could give to someone else that they could get some benefit from. So that was helpful for me.
You know, Marie, something you said, I've heard you say, I've been on your webinars for quite a while now. When I lost my son, it was hard for me to get back into quilting. I saved his shirts, but it was really difficult for me to go back in. And you had a saying that you said, spend 15 minutes a day. And I've heard you say that on and off. And I thought, you know, I knew I wanted to do something with his shirts for my daughters, but I was almost stuck. You
Mhm.
know, it was like, what what can I do? But hearing that voice of yours just say, you know, spend 15 minutes a day. And it wasn't necessarily meaning that. It was some other quilting things we were trying to learn, but it had just stuck in my mind. Spend 15 minutes a day. And I'd never made a t-shirt quilt before. And I finally got to the point where I could spend 15 minutes a day looking through his t-shirts, kind of dividing them up and saying, I can do this for my daughters.
Mhm.
So just hearing you say that, even though it didn't apply to what I was having to deal with, it did help me get through to spend the 15 minutes a day to go through his t-shirts. And I eventually did make a t-shirt quilt for both of my girls from my son's t-shirts.
Mhm.
Brenda, do you have anything to add?
Well, my experience happened a number of years ago when my daughter was a young mother, had a 9-month-old baby and a 4-year-old. And all of a sudden, she had tremendous pain and was finally diagnosed with Burkitt's lymphoma. It's a type of leukemia. And by the time they baselined her, she had stage 4 cancer in a lot of her major organs. And so it was a dire experience for us to face that. When 2 weeks ago, she was a very healthy young woman. But I dropped everything, went to Atlanta, and her husband said to his boss, it was a brand new job. I don't know when I'll be back, but on a I can't take on a job right now until we can figure out what's going to happen. And his father came down, so we had my father or his my daughter's father-in-law, myself, and my husband came down on weekends, and we divided up the caregiving. And I was assigned the night shift. And So I went to the hospital all the time that she was in, and this was over a 3-month period. And I had started a quilt many years ago that was going to be a wedding present for my oldest son when he got married. And I didn't have anybody to help me. I was doing it myself, but a little bit along, I did it. And I had a sandwich, and I said, I've got to have something to do sitting there at night when she was resting or not needing me. What could I do? And so I carried that quilt. It was a queen size quilt. And I carried it to the hospital. It has been all over that hospital. And the neat part of that is that gave me something to do that was not necessarily focused on her, but I could have something to look back on and say, this is something that I did during that period of time. On the day that they finally released and said, I think she's within 12 months, if this doesn't reoccur, that we'll declare her cured. And so on that day, on her last treatment, I actually finished this hand quilted quilt. And it was such a relief, number one, to finish the quilt, because it had been a long journey for me, but to know that that was a symbol of something completed and her therapy was completed. And it was, I have that quilt, and I have it on one of my beds in the bedroom, and that will go to her when I'm no longer here. That's a remembrance of that time.
That's an amazing gift. And I mean, that's an amazing story as well. And I'm not going to say coincidence, but finishing the quilt on the last day, essentially, before your daughter was declared well. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Oh, well, that brings us to a quick transition into our next topic around what are healthy coping mechanisms. And I think all the panelists that have spoken so far, you've definitely heard at least one coping mechanism that seems to be working for them, that being the quilting. So before we do that, let's do one more poll. And I promise this will be the last one. But let's get into our second and final poll. So related to coping mechanisms, for our audience, what coping mechanisms are you currently using to deal with your stress and or traumatic experience? So let me go ahead and get that on the screen for you all. The poll should be on your screen right now. So again, we'll take 30 seconds to a minute for you all to give answers if you so choose. Again, the polls are anonymous, so feel free to answer as you see fit. Elnita, since you're likely going to carry this topic, what type of coping mechanisms tend to be most successful for people undergoing traumatic experiences? And again, knowing that every person is different, but what type of coping mechanisms tend to be the most beneficial?
So as you said, each person is different. It depends on the person. So for some people who are artistic, maybe coloring can be relaxing and a form of self-care. Quilting, as you know, we're here tonight to talk about quilting. Dancing for some people. For some people, it is spending time with others, connecting, and also exercise.
Excellent. And in our poll, that seems to be very consistent with what you just said, which is wonderful. So for our poll, our top two answers, and thank everybody again who answered. I saw the statistics kind of taking a little bit longer to come in because I think there was some more consideration for these questions, and not an easy, I think not an easy answer to give about what coping mechanisms are you currently using. On this poll, we have some very positive coping mechanisms, and we also have some which might be considered a bit more negative or even destructive in some cases. So for our top two answers, folks at 50%, people said that coping mechanisms that they use include journaling, reading, watching television and movies. I think probably some, if we're honest, some binge watching of Netflix in there, which I think that's pretty healthy. Probably Elnita will let us know. At the second spot, talking to friends, traveling, attending community events, essentially being social. And at the bottom of the list, which again, for those of you who answered, I believe, thank you for answering honestly. When we talked about maybe some of the coping mechanisms that have negative attributions, so around self-isolating, binge eating or drinking, denying or ignoring problems, and having negative thoughts. So very much appreciate your honesty there. So we're going to go ahead and end this poll and transition to our next screen. And so, Elnita, where would you like to start with helping people understand what are healthy coping mechanisms and how to cultivate them?
First, I like to start with a meditation, and then I'll provide some information, specific information related to the statistics that Paul shared earlier, and then I will describe how quilting, what quilting does in our brains to help us to cope. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. So I'd like to invite everyone, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes and take a deep breath and let it out slowly. Now, take a moment to get in touch with whatever you consider to be source. That could be a higher power. It could be a sense of the vast universe. It could be a connection to nature. Whatever it is, see if you can connect to it now and all the love that it bestows. See if you can breathe that love into your body. Allow it to fill you up and nourish you and be present with you for the duration of this webinar. May we all open our minds to learning. Honestly, this can sometimes feel awkward. It can evoke moments of discomfort. We may find ourselves judging others or feeling judged by others. I invite you to set the intention right now to just lovingly embrace whatever comes up with acceptance and compassion, recognizing that we're all imperfect humans, just trying to make sense of the world as best we can. Take another moment to breathe in the love from the source you cherish and keep it present for the remainder of the webinar. Now you can open your eyes and we'll start. So Paul shared some statistics earlier, and I'd like to begin by saying that pain, loss, and trauma and stress, that they are profound emotional obstacles that can significantly impact our mental health. And these experiences affect individuals from all backgrounds and ages. Paul shared some statistics earlier, and I'm going to break those down further. I'm going to start with pain. Whether physical or emotional, pain can be debilitating. Chronic pain not only affects physical well-being, but it can also lead to depression, anxiety, and reduced quality of life. And in the United States, 50 million adults are affected by chronic pain. And many people don't know this, but individuals who suffer with chronic pain, they have the same symptoms as individuals who suffer from PTSD. When we move on to loss, the grief following the loss of a loved one, it can be the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship, or any significant life change, it can have a profound impact on us. And bereavement can trigger a cascade of emotions, from sadness and anger to guilt and loneliness. And in the United States, there's an estimate that 2.5 million people die every year, and this leaves countless individuals grappling with loss. And for individuals who are not able to, I don't want to put a time frame on it, but I'll say this, that once a person has been struggling with grief for 1 year, that person can be diagnosed with prolonged grief disorder. And prolonged grief disorder also has the same symptoms as PTSD. And then we'll look at trauma. Traumatic experiences such as abuse, violence, or natural disasters can have a lasting effect on mental health. And PTSD is a well-documented consequence of trauma that affects 8 million people in the United States today. And then let's talk about stress. Today, the world is very fast-paced and stress is pervasive. And some stress can be motivating, but chronic stress takes a toll on mental and physical health. Chronic stress weakens the immune system. It can disrupt sleep and increase the risk of anxiety and depression. And in the United States, 77% of Americans report experiencing physical symptoms caused by stress. Later on, Paul is going to share a resource screen that lists 2 books that if you want to read those books, they go deeper into explaining how stress impacts the body. Even though we may not be aware of it, but when we're stressed, our heart rate increases and we have other physical symptoms that really cause a lot of wear and tear on our bodies and can lead to chronic illnesses. So these statistics and examples, they underscore the prevalence and significance of pain, loss, trauma, and stress in people's lives. And addressing these emotional obstacles is important for promoting mental well-being and fostering resilience. So to navigate pain, loss, trauma, and stress, it's important that we develop a toolbox of healthy coping mechanisms. And these include mindfulness, which involves bringing attention to the present moment without judgment. So the meditation that we completed at the beginning of my section of this webinar, that was an example of mindfulness. So whenever we're mindful, we are aware of something, and we are aware of it without judging ourselves. We focus on our breathing. At the beginning, I asked you all to take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. Whenever we take in deep breaths, it sends extra oxygen to the brain, and that extra oxygen is calming to the brain. Another tool that we need in our toolbox is building a supportive network. That will be discussed later in the webinar, the importance of connecting with trusted friends, family members, or trusted groups, and also incorporating self-care into daily routines. The 4th tool for this toolkit can be expressive arts, such as art, music, or dance. These offer alternate channels for processing emotions and promoting health. And lastly, I want to talk about quilting and how quilting, with its rhythmic motions and tactile sensations, can serve as a therapeutic outlet for processing grief and trauma. So in the context of trauma therapy, there is a technique that's commonly used, and that technique is called alternating bilateral stimulation, ABS for short, and it's also referred to as tapping. And so this approach is used in trauma therapies such as EMDR. And so tapping is is based on anthropologists who studied primates who were in captivity. And what they noticed is that in order to soothe themselves, that the primates would clasp themselves and they would rock back and forth. And that rocking motion is alternate bilateral stimulation, or ABS. So basically, anything that we do on each side of our body is soothing to the brain. It's a rhythmic motion and it's calming to the brain. So other examples of ABS will be walking, running, swimming. Those are all ABS. And so what we can do as individuals is that we can trick the brain by using alternating bilateral stimulation, or ABS, with our hands. We can do it with our hands. We can do it with our eyes, and we can also use music as an auditory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you all tactile, because the 3 ways are tactile, auditory, and visual. So tactile would be touching. And one method is called the butterfly tap. And I'll show you what that's like. With the butterfly tap, you cross your thumbs in front of you like this. You put your hands on your collarbone and you tap slowly like this. You do it one hand at a time, slowly. And whenever we do this, it's calming to the brain. And then when you pause and you take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your lips, you're sending that extra oxygen to the brain, and that's calming to the brain. And when Marie mentioned the 15 minutes a day, if you think about exercise, usually after we exercise for 15 to 20 minutes, we start to feel relaxed. So that's like a magic number, that 15 minutes. And so that 15 minutes a day that Marie, the people that Marie gave that advice to, if they followed it after that 15 minutes, they should have noticed that they felt more calm and relaxed. So I'm going to talk briefly about how quilting can be considered a form of ABS. So first we have the bilateral movement. So quilting often involves repetitive and rhythmic movements, such as cutting fabric, sewing, or stitching. And these actions require coordination and movement of both hands. And this engages the left and right hemispheres of the brain and is calming to the brain. So the quilters on the panel, have you noticed that quilting is calming for you? Okay, I see some head nods. Okay. Also, focus and distraction. Whenever you engage in quilting, you can become absorbed in the process. And this focused attention on that task, it serves as a distraction. And so as a trauma therapist, whenever I have my clients tapping or doing the ABS, it's a distraction. It distracts them from the distressing thoughts, and it is also calming to their brain and calming to their nervous system. So that's what that focus and distraction in quilting serves as a distraction.
Elnita, I have a quick question. I think this may be one that comes up in our Q&A time. But for the techniques you're describing, I think it makes, of course, a lot of sense that as a licensed therapist, if you were to see, incoming client, that you would do this in session. What about for people that are wondering, I love what you're talking about. How can I be mindful enough to do this when I'm not in a therapy session?
Okay. Well, remember I said in the beginning that walking is bilateral. So any type of exercise. So if you want to be able to do it on your own, you can exercise. You can go for a walk. You can go for a swim. If you want to, even writing, like journaling, if you think about journaling, you're not using both hands, but you're crossing over this. You're crossing the middle of your body when you write across the paper. So even journaling can be calming to your brain. And if you decide to pursue therapy and you seek out an EMDR therapist, the therapist can teach you the skills to use on your own at home. And basically, whatever you decide to use in your toolkit, using it every day makes it stronger. So just like I will go back to Marie's example of 15 minutes a day. If you practice quilting 15 minutes a day, I would think you're going to become a better quilter. So whatever skill you use, whether it's walking, whether it's journaling, coloring, dancing, if you consistently use it for that 15 minutes a day, you will notice a difference. Because what happens is that, let's say you start your day, I use this example with my clients, is when I feel anxious, I feel like this on the inside. I feel like a buzz, like zzz, like this. And if I do something that's calming, like if I focus on my breathing, if I go for a walk, or if I call a friend and talk on the phone and connect with that friend, that helps me to calm down. So does that answer your question, Paul?
It does. It does. And I think it answers the a question of some others in the audience. So I think
Okay.
wonderful, wonderful time well spent. I'm sorry, we'll have to move on to the next topic just for the sake of time here.
Okay.
But I'm really hoping and certainly encouraging audience members and viewers, if you want to hear more specifically about what Elnita was talking about, and especially more about the techniques and methods, please make sure to fire those questions into the Q&A, and we'd love to get those addressed during the Q&A session time. Outstanding. Okay. We're going to move on to our next topic here about the importance of self-care. And Karen, would you like to kick us off on this topic?
I would love to. Said as one of the things that my husband and I realized was we are good caregivers, and we have taken care of my father-in-law, my sister, my son, my grandparents. And right now we have my 94-year-old mother. We actually bought a new house so that she would have a place that she could call her own. And it works out good most of the time. Most of the time. She's unfortunately not remembering everything quite right. In fact, the other day we were adjusting some things, and she really wanted me to take this picture, which was a picture of my great grandparents, and kept telling me to put this was such an important picture of my parents. I need to have it up front. And I kind of looked at her like, "You're my mom." She goes, I go, "Well, it's an okay." She goes, "No, this picture of your parents is really important." So, we give of ourselves a lot. When you're caregiving, sometimes we don't realize how much we give. And I do have a brother. He lives a couple of states away. And every now and then talking, he'll say, "Do I need to come down for a little bit?" And I know all the ways to self-care. Occasionally, I do get a little testy, perhaps, because I'm not taking my own advice. It's like, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. We put a lot on ourselves without necessarily taking that time. Just that little meditation that Elnita did, that was great. Meditation doesn't take 30 minutes. It could if you really wanted it to, but we can meditate doing anything. We can be mindful, as she was saying. When you eat, that can be a mindful time of just appreciating the food in your mouth, how it feels on your tongue, how you're chewing it. That in itself is a meditation. One of my favorite things when I'm going a little nutty is just to walk outside barefooted. Now, I live in a southern state and it's already in the 80s. I can walk outside barefoot and be in the grass, and that's a good grounding. I believe in grounding ourselves. We can do things like that. I'm still struggling occasionally with that 1/4 inch seam. That can be, for a quilter, a real specific, mindful activity. You know, if I'm getting a little, maybe mom's been a little repetitive in what she's asking. And she does that sometimes. She forgets, and we've got to give them grace. It's not their fault. They're forgetting everything. And she's asked me the same thing 4 times. Like she likes to help me put the colors together on quilts. And this one I'm doing right now has got just blocks, and she has rearranged those blocks probably 4 times. And I let her rearrange them until I've got them sewn together. And then it's like, no, Mom, you can't rearrange them anymore. They're sewn together. But after a while, it's like, so occasionally we've got to go in and give them grace. But you've got to be able to have something to take your mind away from. You've got to give yourself grace. And you've got to have some opportunity to do that. So you can do that by the mindfulness, focus on your quilting, give yourself 30 minutes. 15 minutes goes by too fast for me when I'm quilting. It's like I just sit down in the chair and 30 minutes or an hour's gone. But to be able to do that, and now, like Brenda, I have a quilting room. I used to do it on the dining room table, but this house now has a quilting room. But we need to be able to replenish ourselves. And for quilting, that does it for a lot of us because it gets us out of our head, gets us out of being frustrated that my mom doesn't know that I'm her daughter, or she asked me who my daughter is to me. That's not her fault. So we need to find things that allow us to have self-care. Aromatherapy to me is a great one too. I love the smell of clary sage and, mandarin orange. So sometimes I'll just put that on a cotton ball and keep it somewhere near me. And it's just the smell. And you go, yeah. And it gives you that moment of peace, but it's got to be a smell you love. So when you get by it, you go, yeah, that's it. That's the one that smells so good. You know, um, Sometimes it's really hard to wrap our heads about what we're doing. And we've mentioned this, but we can reach out to our tribe. And our tribe can be our family, it can be our friends, it can be our quilting guild, or it can just be other people that we know that quilt. Maybe we just are on a Facebook chat with them. We don't have to keep it to ourselves. We don't have to always be the strong ones that I don't want anybody to know that I'm having to take care of her or what she's doing. It's okay to share, and it's okay to let people in to know what we're dealing with. You would be surprised how often uh, people want to help. They want to be that person that can do something for you. And you don't want to just cry your heart out on everybody's shoulder, but the other day, one of my neighbors said, I saw someone up on your upstairs balcony the other day. And went, oh, that's my mom. They go, we've never seen your mom. I go, well, she doesn't really get out much, but she's got an upstairs balcony she can sit out on thing. And they go, oh, I said, yeah, she's 94. She doesn't go many places, and it was like, well, if you ever need anything and you need us to sit with her, let us know. And I thought, that's so nice because right now my husband and I can't go anywhere together unless somebody stays here with her. So you've got to realize that you don't have to take the whole world on your shoulders. And sometimes as caregivers, we do. And we've got to take care of ourselves because if we don't, we're going to deplete ourselves. And then we're not going to be any good for the one we're caring for. And for me, making quilts that I'm going to give to the Linus Project, or making quilts that I'm going to give to someone else, or someone walk in my house and see my quilt up on the board and they go, man, I really love that. I go, it's yours. I'll give it to you. that is part of my love language. Making a quilt that I can share with somebody, getting that 1/4 inch seam right, getting my points to match. That's a big deal to me. And that takes my head away from, is she going to be okay? Is she, I don't hear her. Did I hear a big bump? Did she fall? That kind of thing. So I think we have to look and foremost take care of ourselves. It's not a selfish thing to take a few minutes to yourself. You absolutely have to. Taking, as Elnita said, some of that time, take a walk around the block. Take what she did, in a minute, she did some mindfulness, some meditation, got that breath going, got us thinking about where we were. That's exactly what we need to be doing. Get a little bit of something that smells good and leaves you with that, yes, that smells so good. As you're eating, as you're walking, as you're quilting, and you have music on that you immediately go into, that's my quilting music. We need to take care of ourselves. So we take care of ourselves, we're much more able to cope with her thinking my great grandparents are my parents instead of her, or wondering who my granddaughter is. We're just better prepared because we've given ourselves grace and we can give them grace.
Thank you, Karen. And I'll just say, listening to your perspective, one of the things it came to mind is a saying that I'll never forget, which is you'll never have time if you never take time.
Ah, so true.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you emphasizing the point that one of the good things about self-care is availing yourself time and space to then go care for yourself, as opposed to expecting that you're somehow magically going to fall into a warm, bubbly bath or a room with scented candles like that. There has to be some intentionality behind that. So I very much appreciate that. Okay, we're going to move on and transition to our next point very quickly. So, Brenda, would you go ahead and walk us down the path of your perspective about support and supportive communities? And then, after we're done with this discussion topic, we're actually going to move into just a quick summary of some supportive resources to give you all references in the audience.
One of the most helpful things that happened was my church family, and this was before it was common to have a care net in the hospital to let everybody know what's going on. So this was very, very new, I guess, at the time. But they established one for my daughter. And through that, we had people praying all over, anybody that we knew or knew her. And that was such an encouragement to us. And so I really believe in prayer and know that it is answered. And it certainly was answered in that case. And I'll share one more really quick thing because I'm a widow. About a little over 3.5 years ago, my husband passed away. And I was really having trouble trying to feel, I wanted to talk to him. And when he was in the Navy, he was gone 3 months, home 3 months, and we wrote letters to one another. And that thought came into my mind. And so I started really just writing letters to him. And after about 12 months, and it's kind of interesting, Elnita, that you said 12 months, because about 12 months after I started, I no longer felt a need to do that. And it was like I was talking to him. I told him what I'd done today, or maybe told him a funny story of something that happened. So I've got pages and pages, but it was really part of my self-care and trying to cope with his absence too. So
Would anybody else like to add on to that point? Because Brenda, that's very introspective, and I think that's really, really wonderful as well. I know I can take some lessons away from that. I'm hoping this is also very helpful for our audience today. Would anybody else like to add on?
Just to the ideal of self-care, Karen hit on a lot of points that I'm having to consider because I consider myself a serial caregiver. So probably 2 weeks after my husband passed, I had my mother move in with me. She's 92. I felt that she shouldn't be living alone anymore. And so from one caregiver situation into another, and she has some memory loss. So a lot of the things you talk about, the memory loss, and um, my thing is she'll help with putting the dishes away from the dishwasher. Of course, they're all in different places. And so when you go to reach for something, it's not quite where you thought it should be. And so giving her grace, at least she did try to help and put them away, but they may not be where you want them to be. And so finding ways for my own self-care, because there's a limited amount of time that you have. Sometimes it's just walking outside, listening to the birds, feeding the birds, but just taking some small bit of time for yourself is so, so important. So thank you for reminding me of that. And also the aromatherapy, which I have all the little diffusers, but I just have been so um, busy with my busy stuff that I've forgotten to do that. But thanks for reminding me.
I'm going to ask just one quick question. I saw something come over the Q&A here. But as far as support is concerned, and especially support for folks who have experienced, trauma or loss, um, I think there's a general understanding of kind of what could be supportive for people going through those situations. I'd like to hear your perspective, panel, on what you've experienced that is not particularly helpful as far as people trying to offer support. I think having that inverse perspective may be useful for some folks who may be in a position where they want to support or provide effective support, but don't really have an idea about what things, and again, very much on an individual basis, but what things are not really effective support, even though they come in the spirit of support.
I think one thing that surprised me, that irritated me a little bit, was after my son passed away, someone thought I returned to work too quickly. And I got this, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're already back to work. And it was sit at home, going through his stuff and crying. And I'd already been off a lot of time with him because he'd been in the hospital a long time, or go to work. And I felt like I really needed to go to work just to get my mind, just to quit crying for a little bit, to get my mind back. I want people to remember my son, but I almost felt shamed by people that thought I returned to work too soon, and I didn't feel like I did.
Anybody else?
Anyone suggesting that, well, you should be over that by now. Like there is a definite cutoff time for you to end your morning and get on with it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you all so much for sharing. I know sometimes difficult subject matter, but the hope and the goal is, of course, that everything you all share will have benefit and provide insight to everybody listening or watching. So thank you so much. Okay. I know we're a little bit over time here, and we are going to get to our Q&A session. We just have a couple things to finish out, and then we will get to those questions that I think are burning in people's chests. So here we go. Let's just do a quick summary of key takeaways. So for everything that was discussed today, and again, I hope it was a very insightful discussion for everyone here. Let's kind of summarize in these 4 points the things we want people to remember, maybe even in the form of our lessons learned, what we might do differently, or even how we see ourselves in situations now. But I'll leave it up to the panelists to decide which one of you wants to take which takeaway.
I think anybody could just take them all. I mean, we really want you to give grace to yourself and be intentional about taking the action. I know we're kind of running short on time, and taking small, consistent steps can have a big impact. I think Marie and several of us hit on that. And again, that don't isolate yourself. Embrace the supportive communities. Sometimes we don't even know they're out there till we step out to them, even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first.
For me, I have a new friend, and she has been a widow for 7 years, and she's a little bit older than I am. And I find it comforting to go to her to say, I'm having this issue or this thought or whatever. Did you have that? And she always says yes all the time. So having somebody else who's gone through a loving relationship that's no longer there physically, to know that it's okay, that you're not over it yet.
Just out of curiosity, is there anything to be said about being intentional about taking action?
Oh, absolutely. I think if you're not intentional, if you don't make a plan, you won't do anything. If you don't wake up every morning intending to do something, you won't do anything. I just feel like it's so important to have a plan to do something. I felt like, and I know I said it before, that as my husband's birthday was coming up, I was kind of tearing up and thinking, oh my God, it's going to be, his birthday is coming up. And so I made a plan to do something on his birthday that made me very happy. And so that was my way of getting through it. So, you just always have to make a plan to get through every day. Otherwise, um, it'll be a very sad day because each day, you shared thoughts. Like Brenda said, you shared thoughts, you talked about things, you did things together. And so you have to be intentional about how you're going to spend the day, how you're going to share your thoughts with someone else, um, how you're going to get through the day. So you just have to plan differently now.
And I'll add that number 2 and 4 go together. It's important not to isolate yourself, and that you get the support that you need. And even if the only thing that you can do is call someone, do that. And or as Marie suggested earlier about doing something 15 minutes a day, whatever that one thing is that's helpful for you, try to do it every day.
Thank you all so much. I think amazing takeaways. And as we talked about before, this is truly insightful perspective. And I hope it is, again, very beneficial to everybody watching and everybody listening. Please, if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to put it in the Q&A, and we will get to that in just a moment. So again, thank you, panelists. Just amazingly honest, heartfelt, and I believe true information that's useful to everybody. Thank you.
Let me say one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess the most important thing that I discovered throughout all of the process was that just in sharing just some of what I was going through, like I said, I was amazed at the warmth, the love that people shared with me, um, to say that they cared. And I just can't tell you how much a difference that made to me, that people would share so much of their lives with you. So that turned out to be very important. So a lot of the people that are attendees have all shared something very special with me. And so I want to thank all of them for attending and also for sharing. It made a world of difference, and they know who they are. And also the panelist.
And I think one maybe extended thought is to the individuals where folks have really poured in, leaned in, been very supportive of people who have experienced trauma and loss, that the outcome of your support doesn't just affect the person you're directly supporting. It pours over into other people's lives. It pours over into families and friends. And when that person experiencing who's experienced loss talks to other people about the kindness they've experienced, it inspires others to do good things. So I just thought I'd add that momentarily. Okay. Wow. I almost don't want to move on from this one, but I know we have to. So I'm going to move on. All right. So our next quick thing here is around support and resources. As we promised, a bunch of really good reference material links. If you are actually, Elnita, I tell you what, why don't you speak to this, especially the key points around anybody having a mental health crisis, and some of the organizations specifically around helping people find support for themselves, whether that is or support for others as well, whether that's finding grief counseling or therapists. Why don't you speak to that, please?
Okay. Yes, the first is there's a national hotline 988. You can call or text that number if you're experiencing a mental health crisis. That means if you feel hopeless, if you feel like you don't have anywhere to turn or don't know what to do, you can call or text 988, and it's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they will connect you with someone that will listen to you and help you. And then next we have Grief Share. This is a national group, and they offer local grief support groups across the United States. And then we have SAMHSA, which is Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. This is it's a federal agency, and you can go to that website and you can click on your state and get mental health resources for your state. And also, if you're looking for a therapist, Psychology Today, if you go to that website and you can find a therapist in your area. I also have my website here. I'm licensed in North Carolina, South Carolina, Colorado, and Oklahoma. If you're in those states, I offer video sessions. North Carolina and South Carolina, if you're close to the Monroe, North Carolina area, you can have in-person sessions with me if you're interested. Did you want me to touch on the others? Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the other thing too, I want to make sure we're going to all of this information here is going to be provided to all attendees of this webinar after this is over. So of course you'll get a kind of a thank you email, but we'll include this information in that thank you email. So you all will have this information. So you don't have to worry about not writing it down or not taking a screenshot or something like that. We'll provide this to you so you have this information. A couple quick things I did want to point out, especially given the nature and topic of this conversation, and also for our attendees who are international. Many of you may know about the National Institute of Mental Health. It's a wonderful, it's an organization that has a lot of information. So if you're looking to become informed about things like grief and other mental health disorders, or even understanding, what's happening in different regions in the country, how these things may affect you, things like what is, different options for health insurance or medical coverage. National Institute of Mental Health has a lot of that information. For those participants who are international, of course, many of you are familiar with the World Health Organization. And if you're seeking help, obviously in a country outside of the US, then this is a great place to start to get that information based upon the country and the region that you're in. The two books, or I'm sorry, there's actually three books that Elnita was referencing. Two of them are listed here, and in the information that is sent out post webinar, all of that information will be there with links if you decide to purchase. And this is not a promotional ad to purchase any of the books, but they're great resources that Elnita curated and assembled for us, which I believe offer great benefit. The last thing around the quilting communities, I'll leave it to Marie and the other panelists to talk about some of the quilting communities, obviously virtual, in this case on Facebook, that exist that may be great places to join or get plugged into. One of the things I have very much observed and enjoyed about the quilters that I know is how many of them go to these regional events, to the quilt shows, and how many of them plan, whole days, multiple days of let's get there, let's have lunch, let's have dinner, let's, meet up at this, keynote or whatever it is, and just have so much fun connecting with one another at physical events, community events, etc. So I'll stop there. And anybody who wants to add on information about the quilting communities and what people can expect there, please do.
Well, there are a lot more Facebook communities, which I didn't list all on there, but yeah, there's a Facebook community for every quilt machine and every aspect of quilting that you can find all on Facebook.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap it up there for support and resources. And the very last thing before we get into Q&A, and by the way, thank you so much for those who have remained with us. I know we're a little over time. As I mentioned, we're getting a Q&A, but thank you for sticking around with us. I really do hope that this was worth your time, and I do believe it was. Our last bit, feedback. So we would love to know about your experience. If this was wonderful and a great experience for you and you enjoyed the discussion, we want to know about it. If it wasn't and you feel like, Netflix and Netflix and a pot pie should have been your go-to decision this evening, we want to know about that too, please. So what you can expect when you go to our little feedback survey, one, the link to that feedback survey will be present in the thank you email that follows this webinar. Two, if you are into scanning QR codes, you can certainly do that now, and it'll take you right to the survey page to fill out some of that information. It's not a complex survey. It's just a few questions, and also allows you the ability, should you not decide to ask a question to the panelists today, you have the ability to select the panelist you want to ask a question to and ask that question privately for a response at some later point. So that's available. And then just generally speaking, questions about your satisfaction, topic relevance, etc. So please give us feedback. We really do enjoy it. And it helps us improve for future events and also better the experience for future attendees. So thank you very much for that. And now, without further ado, let's get into the Q&A. All right. So again, thank you everybody for sticking with us. I think all of this was very informative and at sometimes very fun. Now the Q&A, I think we can get into the things, of course, that you're wondering about for our panel of experienced and wonderful experts. So let me stop the screen share. And okay, so what we're going to do here, we do have some questions in our Q&A. And so I'll go ahead and read these off, and you all feel free to chime in as you'd like. And we'll go from here until we get most of these answered. We aren't going to stay too long here. Some of the questions we may end up answering offline, and that will go into either a blog or an individual replies back to those who asked the questions. Just a reminder for Q&A, anybody asking questions, you have the ability to post your questions to the Q&A chat anonymously. So if you don't want to put your name out there, you don't have to. I would advise you also, please refrain from including any information that you don't want to share. So in other words, don't overshare, don't share the names of relatives or people or things like that if you don't want that information publicly available. All right. With that said, I'm going to start here with a question we're going to answer live. So question I've found so much help in a widow support group I started with 3 other friends, but that can be hard for someone with a recent loss. Are groups a good idea for someone whose loss is fresh?
Well, I'd like to answer that one, Paul.
Hmm.
Okay, it depends on the person. If it's someone who already has a relationship with a therapist or has been in therapy before, already has good coping skills, a group might be beneficial. If someone does try a group and the person doesn't like it, they could talk to the leader of the group and let that person know. And the leader of the group should be able to refer them to someone for individual counseling.
Anybody else? Nope, guess not. Okay, well, that was a wonderful question, and Elnita, thank you for the answer for that one. That's I didn't know that. That's very informative. Okay, all right. Next, just reading through. Next question here. So it looks like there was a recent article in the New Yorker about the positive benefits of quilting. Has anybody read that article? Does anybody know about that article? Okay, I wish I had some researchers, behind me or something, and be like, "Go Google that right now. Let's pull that up."
I go read it though.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. We should go find that. Okay, so we'll put that on the to-do list of things to look up post webinar. But thank you for asking that question. Now you've given us something else, another rabbit hole to go down and learn more things. So thank you. Okay. All right. This is more of a statement, but it says, my statement is to Elnita. The butterfly move is great. I use this at nighttime to go to sleep. My sleep doctor tells me that they have never seen anybody fall into a deep sleep in less than 20 seconds. So that sounds ideal. So Elnita, any response to that? And I would also add on as maybe a follow-on question, other techniques like that with the butterfly tapping that do help to rapidly relax people such that they fall to sleep in 20 seconds.
Well, I will say that most of my clients do choose the butterfly because it feels like someone is hugging you too. So most of my clients choose the butterfly, and there are other um, you can tap on your knees. You can do that if you're in a situation where you don't want people to see what you're doing. You can tap your feet. So anything as long as you're touching both sides of your body, it is relaxing to you.
Makes total sense. And I love the idea of these very practical things that people can, again, take away with them. I think a lot of people are being introduced to some new information, and the whole idea of really using techniques from a therapeutic standpoint and being able to apply those in your day-to-day life, especially if you haven't seen a therapist before, and just knowing that some of these things have real impact and contribute to positive mental health outcomes. I hope that's very encouraging for people. There's a statement that's come through on Q&A, so we'll speak to that here. The statement is really this. So not a question, but a statement. I would not have survived the last few years without being able to craft. I knitted 2 sweaters while sitting for 3 months with my mom in hospice. I was in another country without access to quilting. I will be tapping for stress now. Thank you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Any responses for that attendee?
I guess I just want to say to anyone who has sat with someone in hospice or has been a caregiver, They have a special heart, because it just takes a special person to give that kind of care. I think Karen mentioned it, to give that kind of care to someone. It You dig deep into your heart to give, give, and you are receiving very little in return. And in fact, you don't do it to receive anything in return. You give because you care. And so that's a very special person.
That's why you need to be responsible for replenishing yourself.
Yes, you have to fill the well again.
Yeah. Well, our next question, and again, thank you folks for interacting with us over the Q&A chat. Again, feel free to drop your questions in there. We love to answer when we can. Next question. Any tips for men that are different or are the same technique for coping with men? I think that's the question. Any tips for men different or are the same techniques for coping? Oh, coping for men. So men who are experiencing trauma and pain. Are there any tips or techniques for them that may be different than what you presented, Elnita?
The techniques they can be used by men or women. You If you decide to work with a therapist, the therapist will, as far as the tapping, they will demonstrate audio, visual, and tactile, and you'll be able to um, learn which method is most effective for you. I didn't talk much about audio, but if you use YouTube, you can go onto YouTube and search for bilateral music, and you can listen to that. If you don't like the tactile, which is the tapping, you can try bilateral music. So any of the techniques, they can be used by men or women, and they're individualized. Each person is different.
Okay. I hope that answers the question from that attendee. And thumbs up, attendee. You use the anonymous mode. Good job. Okay. All right. Next question. Freshly rolling in. Thank you again. Quilting has truly saved my life over the years. I don't think I'd be here if I didn't have it. When I feel stressed, when I feel stressed, I feel anxious to get to my sewing room or even do something that I can do alone while I work through whatever's on my mind. I've suffered through some very traumatic events, and quilting has helped me tremendously. I recently taught a class to beginner quilters, and I told them if everyone knew what quilting or hobby did for their life, they would they would all have a hobby. So, any responses to that? That was a good one. I really enjoyed that one. Thank you, attendee. No? Okay.
I totally agree. At one point, probably in the thick of, being a caregiver, my sewing room was in the basement, but I knew as part of my prep for the day, I needed to like prepare my mind for what I was going to have to do during the day. I actually brought my travel sewing machine up to my bedroom, and my husband was in a hospital bed that we had in the living room. So I brought my travel sewing machine up to the bedroom, and every morning I would get up and I would spend 15 minutes. Imagine that. I would spend 15 minutes on the sewing machine doing some piecing just to prepare my mind to get in that restful state before I would begin doing those other things that I had to do during the day. So quilting, finding something that would calm your mind, get you in that ready zone, that prepared zone, so you could do the other things that you had to do during the day.
I think that's an excellent answer. That makes so much sense, especially given the perspective. Okay. Another question. It looks like we're coming down to just the last few. Another question. So, um, when you're quilting, very many times it's like solving a puzzle. It looks like so using critical thinking skills. While you're quilting and focused on quilting, do you think that helps you solve other problems or other challenges of your traumatic or painful experiences subconsciously?
I think it does. It allows your mind to focus somewhere else and not obsess over that thing that you can't quite figure out. It's almost like when you're frustrated with something you're quilting and you have to get up and walk away from it for a minute, uh, you just to clear your mind, and then you can come back. So yeah, I believe in that.
I like that. Yeah, I agree. You have to get up and leave stuff to go do other things to solve the problem you first walked away from. Okay. And a nice comment that just came through. All quilting doesn't have to be done on the machine. I agree with Brenda about using your hands to do some piecing or work on a quilt. And I think, Elnita, that's definitely to your point about the bilateral stimulation. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. I think maybe the last question, and we'll call it after this one. But the last question I think would be good to answer is we've heard about from our panelists how some of them got into quilting, why quilting is effective for them as a very healthy coping mechanism. But Elnita, you're still a mystery. Why did you become a therapist?
Okay. I actually I started out as a teacher. I taught social studies at a juvenile prison. Um, and it was very hard. I used to go home and cry every night. And I would call my grandfather and tell him that I wanted to quit. And he would tell me that I couldn't quit until I got another job. So I needed my job. So I kept going back and I came to love it. And what I learned was that it was for males only. And most of the young men there, their learning difficulties were rooted in in their emotions and their emotional reactions to childhood trauma. And so that made me pivot, and I pursued a degree in counseling, and I worked as a school counselor for over 20 years. And I decided to pivot because I wanted to actually be able to spend more time counseling students, because school counselors do a lot of other things. And so I started as a therapist part time, and I came to love it, and I decided to pursue it full time. So that is why I became a therapist.
And now everybody knows Elnita, and she's wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that's it for the questions. So very much thank you all who've attended.
Well,
And
I want
again,
to
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
just make a comment on a couple of the comments that came up. One is never give up or end. Seek the answers that your mind and heart needs, which I think is very powerful. And another comment is quilting is a form of prayer and meditation. I totally agree with that. It does give my mind a chance to pray, and I really firmly believe in the power of prayer. And another comment is I often sewed with my husband in the room supporting me. I cannot turn on the machine without him. I know who that's from, and I know her situation. I totally feel her. Which is part of why the Quilted Poodle is doing what the Quilted Poodle is doing. It's not just my dream, it was my husband's dream as well. So I understand how your husband is there supporting you when you turned on your sewing machine. God bless you. So just wanted to say, I see your comments. Okay.
Okay. And additional, just responding to some other comments here. You all are very welcome. For those who've cited this as a wonderful opportunity to know and hear from others that feel the same way as we do. I think that was very much the intent of putting this webinar out there, of trying to gather people who are interested in the subject matter, but who may be experiencing the subject matter at the same time. And honestly, having a very honest, heartfelt conversation that dispenses with the pleasantries, that doesn't buy into any of the platitudes, and really has a conversation about what it's like to be a human navigating human experiences. So that said, thank you everybody again. And I would like to give the last word to our panelists. Each of you, if you'd like, what closing remarks, and then we'll call it.
This was a great experience, and thank y'all for inviting me to participate. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I'd like to say that I thoroughly enjoyed participating as well. When I met Marie, I mentioned that my grandmother and great aunts were quilters. So I'm very honored to have participated and to shared the information with everyone, and just that I truly believe that that we have the power within ourselves to be able to regulate ourselves and to enjoy our everyday life. And that was one of the purposes of this, is to show people that that quilting is helping you to enjoy everyday life.
Brenda or Marie? You left.
I think you've said it all.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody for coming along on this healing journey with me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, everybody. Lots of thank yous all around. And we very, very much appreciate this. Again, if you're filling out the feedback survey, if this is something you'd like to see more of, these type of webinars, these type of very focused, intentional events, please let us know. We want the feedback. Again, there are lots of people out there who have stories to tell and who would very much like an experience that is, or rather would very much like to share their experiences with people who are interested and who could benefit from that experience, especially in the situation of navigating loss, trauma, and pain. So thank you, everybody. Again, we appreciate your presence tonight, and we hope you all have a wonderful and blessed day. So thank you all. Good night.